What's shaking, everyone? So today I'm going to introduce you to my own little personal slice of hell. I live up here in Grande Prairie, Alberta. Some people out there have probably heard of Edmonton because of the Oilers, Wayne Gretzky. It's a fairly significant city and probably for most people the most farthest north place that's not Alaska. Grande Prairie is the largest city north of Edmonton and the last major stop before here in Alaska. Now, to be completely fair, Grande Prairie's offered me a significantly good opportunity to succeed economically. There's a reasonably good community college here that I did attend, and that's where I got my personal trainer certification. But outside of that, it was a city that when we first got here, my family and I in 1996, I've seen it grow from 25,000 people to now apparently the metro is at last census is around 69,000. Nice. But it serves a much, much larger space than that. Probably, I would say conservatively around 100,000 people it serves every single day with a couple of little suburbs, I guess, little towns that are within 20 miles. But it was a city that grew way too quickly, way too fast. All of the infrastructure is shit, and when it gets repaired, it takes either forever or it needs to be done within the next 2 or 3 years. Because if you don't know about the climate up here, in the summertime, it could be fucking 30 degrees Celsius, and that could be sustained for a week. And then in the winter, lately, it's been dropping around 45, 50 below for, weeks at a time. Weeks at a time. Add on to that a stiff wind every fucking day that ends in Y. And you got climate that's absolutely shit. But hey, if you want to come up here and you want to make some money, or if you want to milk the system and get on a government contract to do some infrastructure, by all means. But for a city that is economically booming, and I can say that, we definitely survived the 2008 world economic collapse. And we weathered that storm, and if it wasn't for a certain idiotic 4-year government stint in the far left, we would be far better along than we currently are. But we also face a significant homeless population that makes no fucking sense, because we'll just dig back to this here quickly, but this is just a little job aggregator I have pulled up here, and it ranges in everything from experienced hands in the oil field to just simple fucking cashier work, or little drivers, DoorDash, make up to $23 an hour, which in Alberta, the minimum wage is 15, and I was just in a job where, okay, you can drag me a little bit for this, but I only made about, it worked out to being, $16 an hour, and I did that for 3 years. But now this is an area where I'm allowed to take advantage of the economic opportunity out there. And as you can see, there are, just on this one job aggregator, 628 jobs out there in a city of 69,000. So it's not for a lack of work. If you want to make money in Grande Prairie, it's easy to fucking make money. Yeah, I got their little economic propaganda 2020 handout that was put out by the local government here, who's run by a man named Bill Given. And Bill Given has been the mayor of Grande Prairie now for the better part of a decade, I suppose. And this part of the province is very, very, very conservative. It is, at least in my entire life, it's never voted outside of the Conservative Party of Canada. Even when we had farther right candidates, and in Canadian politics, that means if the center's right here, they're right there. It was still conservative throughout the entire ticket, and we get a really decent turnout when it comes to elections, and it's just ingrained in society that you vote for the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta, in this case, whatever their name tends to be. But if it's blue, you mark down next to it, because nobody really knows the difference. Nobody else really campaigns. And what makes it so weird is Bill Givens actually, he ran as an independent, and really kind of showed his leftist leanings here lately with a really stupid and worthless downtown facelift is about the best way you can put it. He shut down the entire, the reason why Grande Prairie is why I say that it's a small town city that just grew way too quickly is because when he shut down the downtown to the downtown, couldn't sound older, to do a stupid facelift project, which cost aggressive 8 digits in order to do. He shut down one of 2 major throughways that connect the east and the west half of the city. So you could not travel from the east part of the city to the west part of the city through downtown from May until, I think it was closed until about this time last year, October, just to add some, I don't know, fucking flower planters and lay down some Z-brick, I suppose. But most of those buildings and most of those businesses, thanks to COVID, have been closed up tighter than a pedophile's hard drive, which unfortunately in Grande Prairie we have quite a few of. It is not a safe city whatsoever. I got a couple more statistics to pull up here. Grande Prairie is the 23rd ranked violent crime city in all of Canada. Not just Alberta, Canada. 23. Now, nobody tends to die in our city, but yeah, as you can see, we are well and above ahead of the Canadian average when it comes to assault rates. Sexual assault rates per 100,000 people. This is what all these rates are based on. Yep. 118 incidences. I know some of you Americans and some of you larger city people out there are probably laughing at the fact that there's only 470 assaults or 79 sexual assaults. All of these are tragic, but they may seem like small numbers, but remember 69,000, and that ranks as, I think, 5th or 6th largest city in Alberta. And Alberta is also the 4th most populated province, and significantly gapped between the 3rd and 5th provinces as well. And this isn't new. These violent crime statistics have been fairly consistent. It peaked at around 14, and 23 is about its bottom I've seen. But like I mentioned, there really is no reason for the homeless crisis here, other than the fact that we'll eventually start parsing out why the problem seems so bad around here. But when you're looking at a straight numbers comparison, your median income in Grande Prairie is, I've got it pulled up here, according to 2017, the median family income is $118,000. And in 2017, the per capita, so individual person, was taking in $48,000. And that's the median individual. Glad to know I was stupid enough for 3 years to be well under the median. But yeah, as you can see, this is a city that does very well for itself. And like we've seen before, just on the one job aggregator, 630 jobs out there. And these aren't shit jobs. They are at least $15 an hour. And most of there are very few places that only pay $15 an hour. And I understand that this is all anecdotal evidence, but a place just as simple as like Tim Hortons, their starting wage is around 17, and to be a shift manager, you start in or around high 20s. Oh, I'm sorry, not high 20s, low 20s, but still. And looking at this page right here, you see that they have a bunch of comparative different places in Canada, and specifically Grande Prairie right here, where your average income is nearly as high as the next closest city, which is Fort St. John, which is just across the border and is practically a mirror image of Grande Prairie, except for it has a lot less crime, but also higher taxes because it's just over in BC. So take your pick, I suppose. But housing affordability is right there. You're only paying just under 12 or 13%, around that $77,000 a year for a rental property, for a nice rental property. So not to beat a dead horse, if you want to work in Grande Prairie, if you want to have a decent place to hang your hat at night, it's not hard to do. It's not hard to find. So why do we see pictures like this? Or like this? That? One theory I have is because, like I said, the city grew too fast and too many people from outside the province moved in. Anecdotally, I can tell you when the boom first happened around 2004 up here, the first oil boom, Grande Prairie was about 70 to 75% white and about a quarter, 20% natives from the different tribes and reserves that are around here. There are plenty of them, and There was no real racial tension or anything that I could tell. Granted, I was 6 years old and in school, and when we moved here in 96 and around 2004, race was never an issue because all my friends growing up were native, and yeah, it just kind of seemed like a moot point. And then around 2004, when the boom hit, like I was saying, we had an influx of people coming from outside of the province, a whole bunch of people from the East Coast, and they brought kind of a pillaging sort of attitude along with them, and they never ever wanted to integrate with Alberta values that made the province great, by the way. It was always, oh no, bye, I'm a newfie, or I'm from Nova Scotia, or I'm from New Brunswick. It's never, yeah, I moved here and I want to actually, contribute to society. It's always no, I'll just come here, I'll make all my money, and then eventually go back to that shithole that I fled to begin with because there's nothing to do there. And then once the lull kind of happened, we didn't have much of a lull up here in 2008, but most of the oil companies were all based in Houston with Halliburton and Encana and ConocoPhillips and all of these big multinational oil and gas companies. When they started laying people off, then you started to see some of those East Coasters head back. And then instead of them coming back because, well, the work is hard and the climate stinks and there's not a lot to do if you're doing a mediocre job and they don't have to hire you back because an influx of new people from now outside the country would come in and set up little camps themselves. And I'm talking about Filipinos, by the way. Listen, I've met a bunch of great ones out there, but the big problem is, once again, they don't like to integrate. They always just like to hang out with their own people, and in public or anywhere really, it's just conversing with their own language and creating little self-sustaining neighborhoods within, well, nice neighborhoods. Like Grande Prairie used to be a very free-flowing city where all the neighborhoods would be much more intertwined, but now there's defined districts where drug use is very prevalent in the hillside neighborhood, or all the Filipinos live over in Patterson or on the south side in some of the older neighborhoods. All the rich people live in Wedgwood. All the newfies live out in West Point. It was never like that. And then I think that's also just baked into Canada as a consequence of having a multicultural constitution. Instead of becoming a big melting pot, you legislate segregation into your Constitution and Bill of Rights, really. When you say that there's two separate but equal official languages and you have one province in the middle of the country, well, it's not quite in the middle of the country, but one sizable landmass constantly threatening separation, you end up with people feeling that they're entitled to keep their old traditions and their old societies, which by all means, if you want to adhere to your culture, I have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever, but we're all supposed to be getting together and make this society work. And that's one big reason why I think that this homeless crisis is such a big thing, and it is a crisis in Grande Prairie, because there's realistically no reason for it. And we also have another big problem in the fact that everybody's dropping dead from fucking drugs. Grande Prairie has province's second highest fatal opioid overdose rate. 23 people in Grande Prairie lost their lives to a fentanyl-related overdose in 2018, the second highest rate in the province. The rate per 100,000 residents in Grande Prairie was 31, which is behind only Red Deer at 44 per capita. However, the number from Grande Prairie is down 4 reported overdose deaths year over year from 2017. Oh, cool. Which when the city had the highest rate of all major cities in Alberta. Oh, okay, so it dropped from 1 to 2. Whoop-de-fucking-do. And I can just tell you another anecdotal story. I run every morning, something that I find fun, and I go through one of the major parks in town here, and you'll see needles, empty bottles. I seen a crack pipe once. That was fun. Many, many, many smashed alcohol bottles. And that's another thing. I couldn't find a solid statistic on our alcoholism rate, but I can tell you for sure that if you take a 10-minute drive throughout town, you will come across at least 24 liquor stores, and that's not an over-exaggeration. Every strip mall, every common area has at least a handful of liquor stores. You can't stumble a block and a half without running into 2 or 3. And since the legalization of marijuana, it's gone hand in hand with pot shops popping up. Perfect example in the Hillside neighborhood that I referenced earlier. At the bottom of the hill, there used to be a movie store where my family and I would rent videos for the weekend, and now it's been totally ripped up, and one half it's a liquor store and the other half it's a pot shop. Because I suppose you need to know your audience in Grande Prairie, and escaping the hardships of winter and rather difficult jobs is a growth business, I suppose. And these rates of drug overdoses and alcoholism definitely go hand in hand by the amount of money that's just out there. It's, absolutely absurd, and for a city this size to have a median income of $100 and some odd $1,000, I think those two statistics really go hand in hand, because there is so much disposable income out there, and if you're willing to capitalize on a vice, there's a lot of money to be made here as well. Hence why we go back to the homeless problem. Let's see what the fine people of one of our local rags has to say. With the Rotary House running at max capacity and drug use in a state of crisis in the city, the number of people living on the streets is on the rise. This was in 2019. There are new fire regulations in place at Rotary House that stipulate only 37 people, not the 70 to 80 that have been utilizing it, can use their service daily. Everything GP reached out to Housing and Homeless Supervisor of the city to see what can be done and what can still be done. So the bitch in charge thinks that it's all about housing. Oh, really? Individuals, whether or not they are living in property and are experiencing housing loss due to not being able to pay the rent, I kind of proved that to be a fallacy. They need support. All the ways over the continuum of individuals experiencing homelessness due to addictions, which I pointed out. One program she said is very helpful is the city's housing loss prevention program. It's a direct referral to Centerpoint Facilitation. What they can do is help families that are falling into homelessness with supports, with budgeting. There can be financial support to look and past utility areas or rental areas. Or rears, sorry. Listen, I just don't like to listen to these fucking bureaucrats' line of horseshit. That's another thing too, just because there is so much disposable income around here, people think that it's going to last forever. But the oil patch and even the forestry, because we got the 3 major foresters up here in Canada in close proximity to the city. One is in fact in the middle of the city, Canfor, and they're all rocking too. So even if the oil and gas industry one day magically fucking blows up in somebody's face, or if we all move to this green energy that I keep hearing so much about from our wonderful leader in Ottawa, Grande Prairie won't completely collapse like it probably could have about a decade ago, because there is forestry and it is about a self-sustaining service industry market. But it would definitely be in tough shit if Trudeau could have his way, or former Premier Rachel Notley, who just headed out for the oil and gas industry because maybe one of her exes was fucking a secretary at Encana, who knows. So the article goes on. Grande Prairie has often been highlighted as a city where people come to try and find employment. That's what I spent the first half of this video doing. We're definitely seeing more people coming into our city in regards to jobs and have for decades. I've probably been here longer than this bitch. Some people come from across Canada, arrive with maybe a couple months worth of money, if that, to hold them over until they get a job, and sometimes that doesn't happen. Well, all you need to do is basically pass a piss test and you have every single opportunity at your feet. By the way, Schmidt says the cost of living has been going up, and there are several individuals who are at a point of being one paycheck away from being homeless. So you say that they come here with a couple months worth of money, and then they're one check away from being homeless. Something doesn't compute, but then again, I'm not in a government position, so what do I know? Getting into addiction is another main reason for homelessness in the city. Well, I think that's probably a major reason why most people end up homeless anyways. It's that and mental health, because those are two of the biggest factors based on why somebody remains homeless. The other one is, people just have fun being homeless. They just want to be on the streets. That's not the biggest portion, but it's definitely a considerable portion of the homeless population worldwide even. Unless you're in California, where you get incentivized to do so and you take shits on people's lawns and in parks, or you get free needles, like you do here as well. According to Schmidt, the city has seen a drastic increase in a population group that needs support around addictions. Instead of actually trying to get to the root of the problem, we're just going to support them. She says they have been watching trends and they're alarming. This past winter has been the highest number of individuals using the Rotary House shelter intox mats. And what they do there is they use that as a way to get some more free stuff from the government, because if you go into a rehab like that, you're trying to get yourself on your feet, you get access to a ton of grants at the provincial and at the federal level, and then guess what, they turn around and use all that money, not saying all of them, but most of them turn around to use all that money to, I don't know, fucking fire up a pipe or buy a new belt to tie off with, and hey, end up back at Tent City. Schmidt says to end homelessness, let's see if she has a point. They need to look at more housing options, and yeah, they're starting, there you go, stash away the problem instead of actually fixing it. Starting to do everything they can to get creative. One way they have done this is the 2-year pilot program at the Parkside Inn. What was once a motel, the Parkside is now a permanent supported housing project. There are currently 37 individuals that were chronically homeless and now have a place to live and call home. Some of those people are not in the best of conditions, and in order to apply to be at a Parkside or to be at the Parkside for residency, you have to have a specific path to recovery and as well as a specific path to employment. I have personal knowledge of this project, which I wasn't personally a part of, but I know somebody who was. So I know that this is a legitimate project that is definitely not what they're describing here. It's more or less a halfway house for the people who are in a bad way, are making strides in improving their life and actually doing a good job about it. But our wonderful leader also has a local guideline that outlines the city's proposal to fix homelessness. Here's the plan to end homelessness, and it is such a comprehensive read. We'll just go ahead and go right through it. Homelessness in Grande Prairie. Ending homelessness in Grande Prairie is unique in that we must anticipate and overcome a cyclical resource-based economy where periods of low vacancy and unemployment are punctuated with high vacancy and unemployment. That has never happened around here, but it's nice that they want to put that message out there because they don't want any solutions, because the idiots in charge are always going to be the idiots in charge based on who they align themselves with. According to the Canadian Homeless Research Network, homelessness is defined as describing the situation of an individual or a family without stable, permanent, appropriate housing, or the immediate prospects, means, and ability of requiring it. It is a result of systemic or societal barriers, a lack of affordable and appropriate housing, the individual household's financial, mental, cognitive, behavioral, or physical challenges, or racism and discrimination. It doesn't happen around here. It doesn't happen around here. And most people do not choose to be homeless. Most people. And experience is generally negative, unpleasant, stressful, and distressing. Unless, of course, you have a bunch of friends and you want to set up a bunch of tents in the heart of town where you turn the nicest, largest park in the entire city, Muskogee Park, into a needle-infested wasteland where bums constantly blow each other in the center of the city and the bushes outside. Or there's a half dozen needle collection areas, or you just go next to City Park, or City Hall rather, where you've got Tent City, and that's where all the pictures in the thumbnail come from. That's our lovely city. The types of living conditions that constitute homelessness are varied and can include unsheltered or absolutely homeless, and living on the streets or in a place not intended for human habitation, like the SPCA. Provisionally accommodated, referring to those whose accommodations is temporary or lacks security of tenure, and at risk of homelessness, referring to people who are not homeless but whose current economic and or housing situation is precarious or does not meet public health and safety standards. As in the rest of Canada, there are certain subpopulations, and here's where we get to intersectionality, folks, within Grande Prairie that are more vulnerable to experiencing homelessness, including, here's all the people you should feel sorry for the fact that they are Aboriginal, youth aging out of foster care, single parents, families living in poverty, newcomers to Grande Prairie, people impacted by family violence, seniors, active substance users, individuals with mental illness and or chronic physical health conditions. Supports for these individuals and families that take a wide variety of forms can include provisions of emergency beds, safe and secure interim housing, staffed and supported housing with daytime supports and or permanent supportive housing with 24-hour supports in place. Or you can stop telling people that they're victims and tell them that there are 638 jobs currently available. Get the ones who want to stop being substance abusers proper treatment, which there are a multitude of addictions counseling facilities within the city. And then just tell the lazy fuckers out there to just, wash yourself up and get a fucking job already. Because there's no need for the homeless roving bandits that frequent the downtown core. There you go again with the downtown. But realistically, I'm a 6.5 foot tall man, 2.25, and there is no way in fuck I would walk downtown by myself. Because honestly, another anecdote here, but when I go to the gym, I got to go through downtown, which that's why the story about shutting down the downtown just to have the facelift Bill Gibbon thought was so rightly deserved for, I don't know, his re-election campaign. Truly highlighted how many shopping carts being pushed by drunks and how many crackheads you'd see just roaming the streets at 3:30 in the morning. I'd love for this city to be better. There's so many opportunities here. It just needs to be fundamentally overhauled, and that starts with your local government. That's why I do the Know Your Local Candidate series on this channel, because all the changes don't come from, your county, your city capitals. That's where they do come from. They don't come from your country capitals. They don't come from Ottawa. They don't come from Washington. There's support that comes from the state and provincial levels, but it all eventually comes back down to who's in charge of your local government, because they know the problems of the city. Well, they purport to. I don't think this document means shit, but they should at least have the best handle on what's going on. And if you have the right government in charge, then you actually have a fighting chance to have a functioning society. And that's something that we've lacked here for, well, since 1996, at least in my opinion. I'll give them 2004, maybe, the boom when everything started to really congeal. But that's my thoughts and opinions. I'm sure there are other cities out there that also have another homeless crisis. And if you have other ideas of how to properly deal with the homeless crisis, feel free to drop them in that comment section down below. And if you appreciate what I've been doing over here, feel free to hit that subscribe button or drop a like on the video. If you like this topic, or if there's something else that you'd like for me to speak about, feel free to drop it in there as well. I appreciate the gift of your time, and I hope you guys enjoyed this one, because it's been percolating for a minute. And with that said, I've been Don Consuelo, and I want you guys to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.